Someone kept trying to open the locked bedroom door from the other side. At first, I thought it was the building settling. The apartment was old. Post-war concrete, narrow hallways, pipes that clicked inside whenever the heat came on. I'd lived there long enough to recognize its language. This wasn't it. The sound came again. Soft, deliberate. A hand on the knob. I lay still on the mattress, staring at the faint glow of the alarm clock on my nightstand. 2:17 a.m. The red digits bled slightly into the darkness. The air felt stale, heavy, like it had been breathed too many times already. My bedroom was small. Bed, dresser, one chair with clothes draped over it. The door sat directly opposite my feet, painted a tired off-white, the surface scarred with old dents and scratches I'd never bothered to fix. The knob turned. Not fully, just enough to test it. Click. I held my breath. My chest tightened, every muscle alert in a way that felt immediate and ancient. The silence afterward stretched thin, fragile. I listened for footsteps retreating down the hall, for the familiar creak of the floorboards near the bathroom. Nothing. Then pressure. Not on the knob this time, against the door itself. A slow push, like someone leaning their weight into it, curious rather than urgent. The door shuddered faintly in its frame. Dust drifted down from the top edge, catching in the dim light. "Hello," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. No response. I told myself it had to be my roommate. Ben had a habit of forgetting where he was when he woke up at night, wandering half asleep, trying doors without realizing it. He'd done it once before, months ago. We'd laughed about it in the morning. This felt different. "Ben," I said louder, "what are you doing?" The pressure eased. Relief washed through me so quickly it almost made me dizzy. Then the knob turned again. This time harder. A firm twist, followed by a sharp rattle as the lock held. Whoever it was pulled once, twice, testing the resistance like they were learning its limits. I slid out of bed, my bare feet sinking into the cold carpet. The room smelled faintly of detergent and dust. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, the screen lighting up too bright, too fast. No missed calls. No messages. I typed Ben's name. No answer. The knob stopped moving. I waited. Phone clutched in my hand, pulse loud in my ears. The building hummed faintly around me. Distant traffic a low, constant presence. My breathing sounded wrong. Too loud. Uneven. Just as I began to relax, convinced it was over, something scraped along the door. Not a knock. Not fingernails. Something slower. Dragging. It moved from the knob downward, leaving a faint, uneven sound like fabric brushing painted wood. I stared at the door, imagining shadows on the other side, shapes pressed close enough that the light beneath the door might change. Didn't. "Stop," I said. I wasn't sure who I was talking to. The scraping paused, then resumed, lower this time, closer to the floor. I noticed then how thin the gap was beneath the door, just enough for light, for sound. Not enough to see anything clearly. Something exhaled. It was subtle, a soft release of air, controlled, close. I felt it more than heard it, a shift in the pressure of the room that made my skin prickle. I stepped back until my calves hit the bed frame. "This isn't funny," I said, though humor hadn't crossed my mind at all. The doorknob turned slowly, all the way to the stop this time, metal clicking softly as it reached the limit. Whoever was there held it, keeping the tension, as if listening for something on my side. For me, I realized then that the sound wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the apartment. I thought of the layout, the narrow hall, the bathroom door, the living room beyond. Ben's room was at the far end, separated by two walls and the kitchen. To get here, someone would have had to pass his door, unless they'd never left this side of the apartment at all. "Ben?" I whispered, my throat tight. "Answer me." My phone buzzed suddenly, making me flinch so hard I nearly dropped it. A text from Ben, time-stamped 3 minutes earlier. "Still at work. Won't be home till morning." The pressure on the door increased. Not enough to break it, just enough to let me know it could if it wanted to. I backed toward the corner, my shoulders brushing the wall. The paint there was rough, uneven. My mind raced through options. Call the police, scream, brace the door with the dresser. But each thought felt distant, unreal, like suggestions shouted through water. "Who are you?" I asked. The sound on the other side changed. A shift, fabric, maybe, weight redistributing. Then, quietly, unmistakably, the sound of someone swallowing. I froze. It was such a human noise. Intimate. Something you only hear when you're close to someone, close enough to feel their warmth. "Please," I said. I don't remember deciding to. The word just came out. "Go away." The doorknob released. For a moment, nothing happened. No sound, no movement. The silence pressed in, thick and absolute. Then came a knock. Not hard, not soft, carefully measured. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Exactly the way I knocked when I wanted Ben to open his door without being annoyed. My stomach dropped. The knock repeated. Same rhythm, same pauses. I realized with sick clarity that whoever, or whatever, was on the other side had been listening long before tonight. Long enough to learn habits. Long enough to wait. The handle turned once more, slowly, testing the lock as if confirming it was still there. And then, right against the door, close enough that the sound traveled through the wood and into my bones, a voice whispered my name. It was my voice. Not distorted. Not wrong. Perfect. The knob stopped turning. I stood there in the dark, unable to move, staring at the door as if it might dissolve under my gaze. Minutes passed. Or seconds. Time had lost its shape. Eventually, the sounds faded. Footsteps, soft, unhurried, moved away. The apartment settled back into its familiar hum. When morning came, pale light crept under the door, exactly as it always did. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. The hallway was empty. Ben's room untouched. The front door still locked. There were no marks on my bedroom door, except for a faint smudge near the handle, at about shoulder height, oily, warm-looking, as if someone had rested their forehead there while they waited, listening. She heard breathing behind her, but the room was empty. At first I thought it was my own. The room was small enough that sound had nowhere to go. A square bedroom with low ceilings, one narrow window, and a single overhead light that buzzed faintly when it was on. I was standing near the dresser, folding a shirt I'd already folded once before, trying to quiet the restless energy that had followed me home. The air felt close, warmer near the ceiling, cooler at ankle height, like it hadn't finished circulating since winter. The breathing was soft, shallow, careful. I stopped moving. The sound continued. It wasn't loud enough to echo, but it had weight, moisture, a faint rasp at the end of each inhale that made my skin tighten. I became acutely aware of my own lungs, the way my chest expanded, the way breath filled me and left. I tried to slow it, to prove to myself the sound was coming from inside my own body. It didn't sink. The breathing behind me lagged half a second, like a delayed reflection. I didn't turn around. That decision felt instinctive, older than thought. Turning would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. The glass showed my face, pale and unfocused, the room behind me dim and incomplete, the corners blurred where the light didn't reach. There was no one there. The breathing deepened. A faint shift in temperature brushed the back of my neck, cooler than the rest of the room. Goosebumps rose along my arms. I resisted the urge to hug myself, afraid that any movement might acknowledge it. "Hello," I said. The word sounded wrong as soon as it left my mouth. Too loud, too sharp. It broke the careful balance of the room. For a moment, the breathing stopped. Relief surged, hot and dizzying. Then it resumed. Closer, not louder, just nearer, as if the space between us had shortened without anything crossing it. I took one step forward. The carpet fibers compressed under my foot with a soft, familiar sound. The breathing followed, still behind me, still patient. I could feel it now, not as touch but as awareness. The way you can sense someone standing too close in an elevator without looking. The pressure of proximity. The certainty of being observed. My mind raced through explanations. Old building. Neighbor's television through the wall. Pipes. Anything with structure, with rules. None of them breathed like that. I edged toward the bed, careful not to break eye contact with my reflection. The bedspread was rumpled from where I'd sat earlier, a shallow depression still holding the shape of my body. The breathing seemed to linger over it, as if curious. "Stop," I said quietly. The word felt inadequate, thin. The overhead light flickered once. Not enough to go out, just enough to remind me it could. The buzzing grew a shade louder, vibrating in my teeth. Shadows thickened along the baseboards, pooling where wall met floor. I noticed then that the breathing wasn't steady. It was adjusting. When I held my breath, it slowed. When my pulse spiked, it quickened. A subtle mimicry that made my stomach drop. It wasn't copying me exactly. It was learning the shape of my fear. I reached the bed and sat down slowly, keeping my movements deliberate. The mattress sighed under my weight. The sound behind me dipped, then rose again, as if reacting to the shift in the room. I could feel the heat of my own back, the exposed vulnerability of it. My shoulders ached with tension. Every instinct screamed at me to turn, to confront whatever was there, to give my fear a face. I didn't. Instead, I listened. The breathing had a pattern now. 2 shallow inhales, 1 deeper exhale. A pause that lasted just long enough to make my heart stumble. I realized with a sick clarity that I'd heard this rhythm before. Not tonight. In the quiet moments just before sleep. In the dark, when the room felt too small. When I dismissed the sensation as anxiety, as imagination catching up with me. I'd never checked then either. The air behind me stirred. Not a breeze. A displacement, like someone shifting their weight from one foot to another. My reflection trembled slightly in the glass, distorted by my breathing. For a moment, I thought I saw movement behind my reflected shoulder. A darkening, a suggestion of depth where the wall should have been. I squeezed my eyes shut. "Go away," I whispered. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. No hum from the light. No distant traffic. Even my own pulse seemed muted, as if the room were holding it in. Seconds passed. Or minutes. I opened my eyes. The room looked unchanged. Bed, dresser, door closed, exactly as I'd left it. My reflection stared back at me, eyes wide, jaw tight. Behind me, nothing. I exhaled, long and shaky, the tension draining from my limbs all at once. I laughed softly, the sound brittle. Of course. Stress. Lack of sleep. The mind filling gaps with noise. I stood, turning slowly now, ready to face the empty space and let the fear collapse under its own weight. The room was empty. Relief washed through me. So intense it felt like nausea. I crossed to the door, flipped the light switch off and climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. The darkness pressed in, familiar and heavy. I lay there listening. For a while there was nothing. Then, very softly, just at the edge of hearing, the breathing began again. This time it wasn't behind me. It was coming from beneath the bed. And it was matching my breath exactly.